So skills, we have the add skill type, which allows a specified skill type to be selected as a command. So here we just have magic or special. Some characters you can use both. Typically, it only ends up being one or the other. But it just depends. It depends on your game. And you can change the name of these too. They don't have to be called magic or special. We'll see that eventually here. But if you wanted them to have an additional one here for some reason, you could set it. The more sensible location usually to put it is in the classes tab, but it just depends. You might want to be doing it on a character by character basis regardless of their class, and then you can set it here. And then the opposite here is seal skill type. It says temporarily disables the use of the specified type of skill. So this is another one that's maybe not so useful to use here in the actor section, but if you had a spell, this would be a really good way to do that, or an item or something. You could basically make it so, seal your magic for this battle or whatever, and then you wouldn't be able to use magic skills or that sort of thing. So that's where that is. And then add skill, this is kind of the same thing, except sets a specified skills. So this is a skill by skill basis. So you could say, you can't block for this, X amount of turns, or however you want to do it. You can't attack, or you can't use heal spell, or you can't use the fire spell. And then, that you could use. My apologies. This is the add skill. So these were things that you would be able to use. Let me just double check what it says right on there. So it sets the specified skills as being learned. Okay, so this is to learn new skills. Again, maybe not. I guess you could use it here if you want to. One thing that I think would be useful here is if you wanted a character in particular to have a skill that's maybe outside of their usual class. You just want them, so like maybe Harold here being the hero, like maybe he can't normally learn Spark, say, for example, but you want him to have Spark, so then you could do it here. You can add it specifically to this character and say, okay, well, he's got the normal hero skills, but he also has Spark, or that sort of thing. So this is where you can designate that on a per character basis. And then seal skill, this is what I was trying to describe earlier, where you can't use attack, or you can't use guard, or that sort of thing. Not being able to use attacks at all for a character would be pretty rough, but you could, if you had the right skills set up for them, you could probably get away with it. They'd have to probably guard most of the time, but anyway, you get the idea. You can, seal them on them. Just like you can add them to a character, you can take them away too. Character specific way here. And then equipments, let's see, it says enables the equipping of the specified type of weapon. So here we have a list, and we'll see this more when we get to the weapons, but these are like, you can kind of think of these as weapon classes, essentially. Dagger, sword, flail, axe, whip, cane, bow, crossbow, gun, claw, glove, spear. These are all just set in here by default for the different types of weapons and things. And you could have different classes of daggers, essentially. So, you might have, they can equip dagger type weapons, but you have, 10 different daggers in the game. Well, they can equip any of them, potentially, and, it's that sort of thing. So here, again, if you wanted something that was maybe a little bit outside of their normal class equipment, because that's another thing that you can, it's another place where you can set it. You can say, hero classes can wield daggers and swords, and that's it. Or, whatever you want them to do for your game. But then here again, you can set it individually. If you say, well, heroes normally can only wield daggers and swords, but I want Harold to be able to wield an axe too, so you can set it equip weapon axe. And then that would allow Harold only, and not the whole hero class, to be able to equip an axe. Armor, same exact thing pretty much. Enables equipping of the specified type of armor, so same deal, all general armor, magic armor, light armor, heavy armor, small shield, large shield. So these are all different armor types that are set. You can think of them like classes again, if that helps you. Armor classes, whatever. And they're, you can do the same thing. Just same with the weapons. Now lock equipment, I think this is the one where you can't unequip it if I remember right. It says prevents the changing of equipment for the specified equipment slot. It says used mainly for instances such as when you do not want the player changing the equipment of a character that has been temporarily added to the party. So yeah, that's one way you could do it. So you could say they can't change their weapon, their shield, their head armor, their body armor, or their accessories. So for a temporary character, you could do one of these for all of them. You could say this character, you can't change any of their equipment at all, or maybe you can't change their weapon, but you could change everything else, or however you want to do that. Another way you could do it is maybe not even for a temporary character. You can just say, this is a special character and they have this special weapon and they'll never not have that weapon as their weapon. So it's the only weapon they get in the game, and so then you would lock their weapon into whatever their starting weapon was, and you can set that, specifically. And then seal equipment, here it says prevents the equipping of any equipment for the specified equipment slot. For example, preventing the use of shields for a given weapon makes it a two-handed weapon, and preventing the wearing of a headgear for a given piece of armor results in full body armor. So that's one thing you can do. But you could also just do it in a more simple way, like, I don't want them to be able to wear accessories, or that sort of thing. Or maybe you do want a character that can't have weapons, or at all, or that sort of thing. And then slot type here, it says can only be set to dual wield. This enables the equipping of two weapons in exchange for not being able to equip a shield. So if you want a dual wielding character, then you set this to dual wield on that character, and then you can do that. Then you can have two swords or two whatevers, daggers or anything like that. And then the other tab here, it says action times plus. It says increases the number of times actions can be taken in battle by the specified probability. For example, entering 50% twice results in a character that has a 50% chance of acting twice and a 25% chance of acting 3 times. So I've never really messed with this, but it sounds kind of interesting. So what they're saying there, 50% twice, they mean 50% and then you'd hit OK and you come back in and you do this again and 50%. So that's what they were trying to talk about with that. So how that basically works is, if you have, because you have a 100% chance of acting one time, so 50% twice results in a character that has 50% chance of acting twice. So you would go 50% chance, so basically a coin flip of, taking the second action, and then if they took the second action, then you'd get another coin flip at that point to see if they would take a third one. So. But in order for that to succeed, they'd have to do it, they'd have to be successful with their second action in order for the third one to have a chance. So that's why it goes from 50% chance to 25% chance. So, even though they're both 50% chance, it's a little bit confusing, but yeah, if you want to have, I think that's kind of an interesting feature that would be probably kind of fun to do, because I feel like that's something that if your character gets to act multiple times, that's pretty rewarding for a player. Like, oh, hey, I get it, I suddenly get a chance to do another action right away, or, that sort of thing. So, and I don't really see that in too many games, so that would be kind of interesting to explore a little bit. I don't know that you would want all your characters to be able to do that. It might be and it might not be a good thing necessarily to set here on a per character. I mean, you could on a per character basis, you could do it, I guess, but it might be more rewarding to do something like maybe in the weapons or something, or armors, or if those trait abilities are there, if it lets you do that there. I think it will. We'll have to double check when we get to that point, but it might be something like that, so that you can tie it to like a reward for the player, like, hey, you get this weapon and you've got a 50% chance of taking 2 turns with it, or that sort of thing. It could even be an accessory too. That might make the most sense to have it tied to that. But you get the idea. So here we have a thing that says special flag, and it just says special states. So there's a couple of different options. They're auto battle, which is when the character acts independently without accepting commands in battle. So if you want a character that is just going to automatically be controlled by the game, and you aren't in control of it, then you can set auto battle for them. You see that sometimes with like guest characters and RPGs and stuff. It's like, well, they're joining your party for a little bit, but you're not in control of them, and and they'll just do their own thing, but you keep the rest of your party members. And that might also be another good thing to use with the lock equipment and everything, so you can't remove their stuff, or maybe best suited for temporary characters, but maybe not. You might be able to use it for a more permanent character in a good way. And then the next option is guard. It says reduces damage taken at a set rate. So I'm guessing that would just guard every turn. I'm not too sure, actually. I don't really know. I don't know. That doesn't sound too useful, but maybe there could be a way to use it in a creative way. Substitute is the next option. It says character suffers attack in place of allies with less HP. So you see that ability in certain games where it's like protect or guard or something, or they'll call it like cover, or I don't know. It goes by various names, but the basic idea is like if you've got a character that has more health than someone else in your party, they will sometimes take the hit for them if if an enemy goes to attack the weaker party member, they'll kind of like step in and instead of having the weak character take damage, it'll be the healthier character that'll take the damage. So you can set that there for a character to do, and then the last thing is preserve TP. So it says accumulated TP are retained for the next battle, and we'll get a little bit into the HP, MP, TP, all that stuff. I think that by default TP is like technical points or tech points or something like that. I'm not sure exactly off the top of my head, but it's basically a secondary pool of resources for certain kinds of abilities and things like that. In addition to MP for magic points, and so if you want two different ones in your game, then you would use TP also. And you can also turn it off so that there is no TP in your game and there's just MP and HP, that sort of thing. So those you would just set here if you wanted to do any of those special abilities. The next option here says collapse effect. And that one, it says valid only for enemies. Changes the effect for when they are knocked out. So this one doesn't even make sense to have here at all. You wouldn't be able to use it in the actors thing, it doesn't sound like. So it's another example of like, well, this is kind of weird that this is here, but whatever. I think it's just because they all share the same traits menu and function. So even the states that, or the options that don't make sense to have there, like right here, this one, it's still there anyway. So I'm not sure, but it says valid only for enemies, changes the effect for when they are knocked out. So I don't think I've ever used this one, but I'm guessing it's a normal, boss, instant, and no disappear. So I'm guessing what'll happen here, normal, they'll just, when you defeat an enemy, they're just gone. That's normal. Boss, I'm guessing, will replace them. So like if you defeat a small enemy, like they would replace it with the boss character enemy or something. And that could be kind of interesting because it's like a substitute sort of thing. Like say you had a multi-stage boss where it's like, oh, you got to defeat all these little guys first, and then when you're done defeating all these little guys, then this big guy comes out. It could be that kind of thing. And then instant, or another thing you could do with boss actually would be like if you had like say 4 different enemies or something, and they all look the same, but like you have to have the player like, okay, you got to find the one that's gonna be the right one to defeat, and then that triggers the boss or something like that. So instant, I'm not really sure what that does. My only guess there is that like it doesn't show the usual animation or something, maybe when it, the knockout animation. I'm not sure though, because there's a little bit of a fading effect and stuff, and as the enemies like get defeated or whatever, and they they kind of fade off the screen a little, and maybe that would just like instantly get rid of them. I'm not sure. No disappear. I have no idea what that is, other than they'll just still sit there on the screen. Like I'm guessing you can't target them or anything at that point, but they still stay on screen. My best guess for the purpose for that would be some kind of visual thing where you maybe have a big battle and it's got multiple parts to it or something, and you don't want the part to like to disappear from the screen. Like you want it to stay on the screen even though you technically defeated it. I'm not really sure. That seems pretty specific use case, but maybe I'm just not thinking creatively enough there. And then finally on the last one we have, it says party ability. It says valid only for actors, so this one makes the most sense to be here, unlike the one just before it. So this is an ability that is shared by the entire party. It is enabled if at least one of the party members participating in a battle has this characteristic. So here we have options: encounter half, encounter none, cancel surprise, raise preemptive, gold double, and drop item double. So I guess if it only needs one character in the party to have it for it to work, but it looks like it just kind of affects things related to battles a little bit. So your encounter rate for enemies could be dropped in half. Encounter none, I'm assuming, means you don't get in any random encounter battles at all. Cancel surprise, so that would be every once in a while there's a % chance for enemies to surprise the player, essentially surprise the player's party. So it basically means that they get to move and act first. They get, before the player gets to do anything, where by default it's kind of I think it tends to favor the player, but it might depend on the agility rates and all that stuff of the characters versus the enemies and things like that. So I'm guessing that nullifies the ability for enemies to act first like that. That's kind of nice, I guess. Raise preemptive. So this is kind of the opposite thing, where players would be more likely to act first because there is a counterpart to that. So the player was surprised, or the enemies were surprised with the preemptive attack, that kind of a thing. And then when that happens, the player for sure gets to act first without, they get a whole turn of doing that. So I'm guessing that raises the frequency at which that happens. Gold double, I'm guessing just doubles the amount of gold you get at the end of every battle, and same with drop item double. So if you got, normally quantity 1 of 3 different items, then you'd get quantity 2 of those 3 different items, or that sort of thing. So some interesting little things to play around with, not necessarily crucial, but anyway, so that's a general overview of the traits. I know that was a lot, and I apologize for anything that I didn't really go into as much detail as people would like, but to be honest, some of those features I've never even used, so I'm just hoping I'm getting most of their purposes and things right. So here I'll just briefly look at the other actors. We have Therese, and she's the warrior class. She can wield axes, or at the start of the game she has an axe, a shield, a hat, basic cloth, and no accessory. Marcia, she's the mage class, and you can change the names and stuff. We'll look at that here in just a second. She has a cane, and she has no shield. She has a hat, a cloth, and she starts with a ring accessory. So far she's the only one that's had an accessory to start with. And then Lucius, he's a priest class, and he starts with a bow, no shield. Has a hat, cloth, armor, and he also has a ring too. So if you want to change more characters, these are just by default. You just use this change maximum option down here, and then you could say I want 10 playable characters in my game, and then you can add your basic ones here, and then you just have to set things manually, or you can start with one of these characters and copy and paste them, and that way you don't have to do everything from scratch necessarily if you want certain things to be the same, or if you want maybe you had another hero class character or something, and you say, oh well, let me just right click and copy Harold and then paste him in here, and then then you could just change the face graphics and the name and that sort of thing. So however you want to go about it, but that's how you change all that from the default.